So a couple things I'd like to clean up from last time. First, I'd like for the line to not show up on top of the ball, so I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to put that layer underneath the game, and I'm going to name that the line layer. I'm going to go up and select the line and change its layer to the line layer. So now the line will show up behind the ball and the game. Go ahead and lock my other layers. Then I want the line to show back up each time we hit the ground. So on event sheet, when the ball hits the ground, we will take the line and we will do set visible to visible. And we already have the line being set invisible whenever the ball is launched. So we test that, the line is now behind the ball. We can shoot it, and whenever it hits the ground, the line comes back. Now we want to add the possibility of shooting more than one ball at a time. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a separate object used to spawn all of the balls, and I'm going to call that a ball spawner. So I'm going to take my ball, move it off the screen, then I'm going to create a new sprite, and I'm going to load the ball image, close that, name it ball spawner. It's not going to do anything except create the real balls and be visible, so we don't have to change any of the properties over here. Now it might get confusing as to which one is which, so I'm going to double click and I'm going to duplicate the frame so that I have two. And then using the pencil, I'll just put a mark on this to designate that it's the spawner. So then it'll look different than the ball on the stage. Place that down at the bottom. When I double click on it, you'll see that the animation speed is not 0 and it doesn't loop. So as soon as we start the game, it's going to move over to this second frame and we won't be able to see the S. We'll only see that on the layout. For the position, we want to make sure it's not touching the red. The vertical position doesn't particularly matter. We'd probably like it in the center. Half of 576 is 288. So I place that perfectly. If you want a little bit of space between where you're at in the bottom, 920 is an okay spot, but the Y doesn't matter as long as you're not touching the red. On our event sheet, we're going to need something to keep track of how many balls we're supposed to have. So I can do a variable, and that's going to be ball count. We will start that at the number 1. On start of layout, we will need to destroy the ball, because the one that's off the screen we don't need. Then under the ball, we're going to add a condition to our mouse left click. So add another condition. We want to check if the ball is visible. So if the ball is visible, then I'm going to right click the green arrow and add a sub event. And I want to do a system for loop. I'm going to call my loop create balls. And we're going to go from 1 to ball count. So if our ball count is 1, we'll do this 1 time. If our ball count is 10, we'll do it 10 times. On my clicked, I want to add an action. I want the ball spawner to become invisible. So do set visible, invisible. And then I want to create the balls that I'm actually going to use. So I'm going to add an action. I want the ball spawner to create the balls. So spawn another object. They're going to spawn the ball. The layer we want is the game layer, so that is layer 2. Image point is the origin of the ball spawner, so it's going to be right in the middle of the ball spawner, so it's going to come from the same place. Here's where I want to set the angle, so I'm going to take the ball set angle, put that right underneath where the ball is created. And I don't want all the balls to launch at the same time, so I'm going to go to ball, and I'm going to go to behaviors, and I'm going to add a timer. Close that. Right after our set angle, we'll add another action. We want the ball to set a timer. So go down to where it's timer, and we'll do start timer. And our duration is going to be the loop index times however many seconds we want to pause between each one. So I'm going to do 0.1. I'm going to name my tag move, because that's when I want the ball to start moving. And we only want this to happen once. So hit done. Now if the ball is not moving, then it's not going to have an angle. So I need to have the ball set to a speed, even if it's really low. So I can do set speed 0.01 and hit done. That'll be enough for it to keep its angle, but not enough for us to actually see it move before the timer goes off. Then under ball, we need to add another sub event for when the timer goes off. So let's do ball, go down to on timer. The timer we want is move. The same name that we had, it needs to be the same. So if you did capital M, you need to do capital M here. Hit done. And on the ball timer is when we're going to set the speed. So we'll take our ball bullet speed and move that down. We should be able to close ball for now. So now when our ball hits the ground, we're going to have to change some of this stuff up. So first, let's add a sub event to our ball collision. So right click on our green arrow to add a sub event. We're going to do a system, compare two values, and we want to see how many balls there are. So let's do ball.count. And if that is greater than 1, then we want to destroy the ball. Then we want to add an else. So that means when the ball is 1, or potentially 0. We still want to destroy the ball, so let's copy this, paste it. And we want to do a few things. First, our lines is going to increase. So let's system add to lines 1, hit done. We want our ball spawner to become visible again. So if I go up to ball, take the ball spawner, set invisible, copy that. Go back to add lines, paste that, and change this from invisible to visible. I want the ball spawner to be where the last ball was. So I'm going to take the ball spawner and I'm going to set the X value equal to the ball's X value. I don't want to change the Y value so that my ball spawner is always the same vertical position, but this will allow it to go wherever the ball hit the ground. And since it's ball count greater than 1, it's going to be the last ball. Since we're using the ball value here, let's make sure our ball destroy happens after that. This is where we'll want to spawn our bricks. So let's take our system, set group, spawn bricks activated under here. We don't want that to happen every time a ball hits the ground. If we have more than one ball, we only want it to happen on the last ball. Speaking of which, we don't need the ball speed, so we can delete that. And we only want the line to be visible after the last ball also, so let's move that down. So ball on collision with ground is actually empty. Now every brick that gets moved down, we don't want that to happen every time a ball hits the ground. We only want that to happen on the else. So we're going to have to take this, move it down, and then it needs to be a sub event. So move it to where you have an arrow so that it's a sub event of the else so that it's indented underneath the else. Now that all of these have moved, all of their tags will need to be updated. On the else, I can add a blank sub event so it happens right after all of the bricks get moved. So right click, add blank sub event. And I could do set group update bricks active, but I'm actually going to just move my spawn bricks down because spawn bricks will run update bricks right afterward. So here we'll do both at once. And then some error checking. I don't want the ball to get stuck in the wall. So I'm going to add another sub event to the else, where I check the ball spawner's coordinates. So the ball spawner, I want to compare X. If that is less than 26, so that's off the left edge of the screen, I want the ball spawner set X to be 26. Then I can click the left edge of that, copy and paste it so that I get another one. Double click the condition and I want to do greater than 550. And then double click this to be 550 also. So if it's left of 26, we'll make it 26. If it's right of 550, we'll change it to 550. That way, if the ball comes down in the corner, our spawner doesn't end up on top of one of the sidewalls and get our ball stuck as soon as we launch them. Now for our line to work correctly, since we removed our ball and we changed it to ball spawner, I'm going to double click on this first one, change it from ball to ball spawner, hit done. And this second one, everywhere it says ball, I'm going to change that to ball spawner. So double click the word ball, change that to ball spawner, double click ball, change that to ball spawner, and then click done. And now the line should work correctly again. Similar to the change we just made with line, under ball, we are actually checking if the ball is visible instead of the ball spawner. So let's double click that. We can click back, change it to ball spawner, and if you click done without selecting anything, it should stay on is visible. Now we should be able to test this to see if we can launch one ball correctly. That seems to be okay. If I run that with debug mode, we'll see that currently we have one ball spawner and no balls. whenever I launch this. Ball becomes 1. Ball spawner is actually just invisible, and then when it hits the ground, the ball becomes invisible and the ball spawner comes back. All of our bricks move down and update correctly. And once we get higher rows, we start getting the different colors. So now let's see if we can launch more than one ball. So I'm going to change ball count to 5 temporarily, hit run, and see if I can launch multiple. That seems to be working okay, and nothing happens until the last ball makes it back down to the bottom. Sometimes a ball might get stuck moving side to side like that. If it's vertical, it's okay, because it'll just eventually hit the ground. But if it's going side to side, it might take a really long time for its really small angle of 0.01 or something to make it all the way to the bottom. So on ball, I'm going to add a sub event. We'll do a system for each ball. For each ball object, we'll hit done. And then we'll add a sub event. We'll check the ball. If it is between the angles 3, 55, and 5, since it's in clockwise order, make sure you're doing that in the correct order. If you do 5, then 355, that's going to be almost every angle. I'm going to hit done. Then I'm going to add another condition if the ball is between angles. And this is just going to be something that's really subtle. If it's between 89.5 and 90.5. This is so it doesn't get stuck bouncing up and down on a block with a really high number and you just have to wait for a really long time. We're going to hit done, and then so that this is not a noticeable thing that happens, we'll take the ball and we're going to set the angle to itself. So ball dot angle plus 0.1. Doing this should prevent the ball from getting stuck, bouncing left and right, or in a really long process of going up and down between a brick and the ceiling. And just in case a ball manages to get outside the layout, we're going to add a sub event to the ball, and that is if the ball is outside layout. You might be tempted for it to be destroyed, but just in case it's the last ball and it happens to somehow make it outside the layout, we're going to do ball set position to another object, and we're going to set it to the ground. That way it can collide with the ground just in case it's the last ball. And if it's not the last ball, it'll just be deleted. And before we forget, make sure that this block with both of the balls is actually an OR block so that it works for either, because it's actually impossible for it to be between this one and this one at the same time. So that should make it run fairly decent. And we can add in some progression and some text to the top of our game next time.